I'm speaking today with Kevin Jaragosian of the Neverly Brothers, the next artist coming to One Night Jam at the Chicago Street Theater. Kevin, you and I go back a long ways from the days when you were playing at the Blue Chip Casino and I was mixing the band. And I just really like what you do. Now, this is really a step for One Night Jam because traditionally my artists have been singer-songwriters, mostly doing their own compositions and that. And while you do tribute music to, to other bands, it's done in a very interesting theatrical manner, which I thought really fit in with what we do. So tell us about what the Neverly Brothers are doing. And by the way, let's mention you've been doing it for 20 years now.
Yes, this is the 20th anniversary of me putting this band act together. And as you mentioned, that was in 2003. And in 2008 was our first time performing at Blue Chip when we were still doing smaller stages and lounges, which we don't do any longer. Fortunately, we've graduated and our career has progressed. And but yeah, 20 years. We're in the middle of our 20th anniversary tour, which kind of makes it fun to work with you again at the Chicago Street Theater, Sunday, March 10th. That's right. It's a Sunday show. So our show, as you mentioned, and as you know so well, because we used to play there quite often, once a month for several years, is a different kind of an animal. It's not your typical tribute act like a traditional tribute show where an artist imitates and dresses like the artist and talks like them. And it's usually one artist, particularly like a Beatles tribute band or an Elvis or somebody. Our show is a tribute and a celebration of rock and roll in a chronological historical progression from 1955 to 1965. And the first half of the show, we celebrate the pioneers of rock and roll who came out of America in the 50s. The second half, it's the 1964 British invasion, and the whole idea is it shows how rock and roll started in America in the 50s, how it sort of died in 1960, and how the British bands brought it back to life and resuscitated it or resurrected it in a way by imitating it, pretty much just imitating the songs that they liked from American artists initially, from the 50s, from the early 60s, from Motown, rhythm and blues, rock and roll. And our whole concept is one of the other unique aspects is it's like a virtual tour bus ride. So all the people in the audience become passengers on the bus. The theater becomes the bus, the virtual tour bus, and we become the tour guides. And people around America stop in different cities and small towns in the first half in America where the artists either or where they were originally from, born, and we give a little bit of a historical narration, keep it nice and short but interesting to where they are, where they're from, what their influence was, and then we perform a song and move on to another city and do the same for another artist, and that continues for the whole first set. And then the bus tour takes a break. We take an intermission. We come back.
And that's what you were talking about there is one of the things that makes it special, interesting is you're not just playing a bunch of songs. You're giving a little narration, a little history behind why you're playing those songs and what significance they are to the overall theme.
And so when we go over to England for the second half of the show, we start doing the same thing. We stop first in Liverpool, which of course is where the Beatles were from, who were the first one that sound to the world and popularize it. Um, and then we move on to different cities like Newcastle, where the Animals were from, and we go to uh, London, of course, where a whole plethora of bands came from: the Rolling Stones, Dave Clark Five, uh, Chester, where the Hollies were from, and Herman's Hermits and other groups. So this whole virtual tour does the same thing in England now in 1964, 65, and what we're doing over in England now is we're performing songs and giving the same background on each of the artists and bands, except the songs that we're performing are songs that were originally recorded by American artists first. A great example, Twist and Shout. The Beatles recorded it in 1963 on their very first full-length studio album. Originally, that song was recorded in 1962 by the American rhythm and blues group, the Isley Brothers. So the Beatles version, it just takes that to another level. the recording equipment and technology advanced more. The sound that they created obviously was more exciting in certain ways, and they were also, being white artists, they were able to transcend the color barrier and get this music of black artists to the white population, which was a big part of it as well. So that's what our show does. It shows the timeline of rock. It shows the birth, the death, the resurrection, and we have a wardrobe change for each set. So we're in the period of each set, and the microphones that we use are sort of vintage mics too. So the whole feel gets people in this experience, along with, if it's possible, we'll see. We do it in most theaters. We use a PowerPoint or a slideshow behind us or on the side of us with images of the artists, of the cities, of relics of the eras that we're celebrating and representing as well.